Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Urban Network podcast. Today, I'm joined by Nicole Raubenheimer, who's the founder and the lead designer at Precious Hammer Jewelry Studio. Nicole, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Hewitt. I'm so glad to be here. I appreciate you having me down.
Of course, yeah. And I've known you for a while now. I feel like it's been a couple years, or at least like a year and a half, because you've been a regular attendee at Urban Network, which is the name of the, if you don't know, if you're listening, the networking events that coincide with this podcast. They're monthly networking events, and Nicole has been going to almost every one. So, Nicole, I'm wondering, how has your experience been attending and participating in Urban Network?
I've really enjoyed Urban Network. It's a really creative group of people here, and so that really attracted me to people who are kind of in the same mindset as I am. We're always looking for people to surround ourselves with that are at the top of their game and want their game to be even better. So that's something I always looked for. As a jeweler, being kind of in the back room, getting out and meeting people is basically mandatory to get your business off the ground. And so having a small group like this that's been growing has been really awesome for me to spread my wings and get my tongues untied and meet some great people that I can hardly wait to get to know better and work with and refer to and all those good things.
That is amazing to hear. I've been attending Urban Network for probably like 2 or 3 years. And it's just been such an amazing experience, just like networking with other business owners, meeting referral partners, and just, as you said, just like practicing your elevator pitch, practicing communicating about your business. And it's like an invaluable kind of skill and experience that I would definitely recommend to anybody. So if you're listening and looking for a networking group, go to urbannetwork.biz to register today.
Highly recommended.
Awesome. You heard it here first. So Precious Hammer is a jewelry studio. You offer custom designs, you do refurbishing and repair, even like some unique pieces that you've designed yourself. I'm curious, like, how did you initially get interested in jewelry?
Well, I'll blame my mom for that. When I was growing up in the 80s, my dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot. And so having fun things for kids to do needs to take up a small amount of space. And my mom found a magazine that had a clipping for friendship bracelets. And so she snipped that out, and I started embroidery thread, colors galore, doing my little knots and making friendship bracelets for all my little friends. And then in the 90s, I kind of graduated a little bit and stepped it up with some more complicated knots, working with hemp and leather instead of sewing thread, and decided I had enough pieces, maybe I'll try to sell it at a store. So I went to a shop in the big city, and they said, sure, leave your stuff and come back at the end of the summer. So at the end of the summer, I came back and got some money and picked up the one piece that was left over, and I thought that was pretty awesome. And then about 3 years later, which is 2001, 20 years ago this summer, I ended up in a doorway of a place called Mithril. And if you are a Lord of the Rings fan like myself, you will know that that is the fictitious metal in these books. And I did. Within 2 months, I was working there. As it turns out, apprenticeships are not really a thing in jewelry. At least they're very hard to find and come by. And I found an apprenticeship. The girl who I took over was planning on leaving to have a child, and so she trained me on her way out. And so I learned to weigh and measure all the alloys. So I broke down all the fine metals and combined them into 14 and 18 karat golds, white or yellow. I rolled out ingots and wire for the guys to use in the pieces that they were making. I would help the wax carver and assist in the lost wax casting process. And of course, as the sole female, I had creative license over the tiny storefront. So I would set things up all pretty, but there was a section of loose stones that I really loved. I loved looking at them, quizzing myself on them, almost like the hidden wine brown paper bag. Like, is it a Merlot or a Cabernet? Is it a Ruby or a Spinel? I got really excited about stones about that time. I bought my own equipment so I could work out of my little one-bedroom apartment, and I was introduced to a person who did lapidary. So I learned some stone cutting and polishing, bought myself some of that equipment so I could play around with that, which I still do on occasion. In fact, I have a little piece for you today, Hewitt.
What?
Yeah,
Really?
totally brought you a present, man.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
I have the rock that's half open, the slice for you that is from the other half, and then a piece from that other half of slice that is cut for a piece of jewelry that is for a potential project. In any case, so then in 2007, I said, Kentucky is really small and I don't want to be tiny. I want to go find my place in this world. And Oregon had two of my favorite things, jewelry and wine. So I ended up getting a jewelry job first for a corporation this time. So instead of the small businesses that I had been working for, I worked for a large corporation. So I got certificates from Diamondology course from Diamond Council of America. I worked on the sales floor. I got certified in stone setting, and now I have 13,000 hours on a laser star laser welder, which is what I've been using for the past 10 years for my specialty in antique restoration.
Wow. Well, that's like such a like in-depth, extensive background in jewelry. And it's like so special and like rare that you had that one-on-one kind of mentorship experience. Like that's pretty neat.
It was really great working for three brothers and a wax carver and having basically starting from the ground up in making the piece. And so that was really great to see. You don't get that in a corporate environment. Their products are all mass produced, so nothing's really made on site for the most part. And the quality doesn't seem to be quite as good either because they can kind of change the alloy content to suit what they need to do for their large businesses. But jewelry I thought was great because what other field could you be in, try out all these different aspects and still be in the same field? So that really appealed to the Gemini nature of myself and finding a specialty and which part is it that I'm going to be specialized in. Turns out it was antique restoration.
Nice. Yeah. That's such like kind of a unique niche in jewelry. And I was talking about this with Project Lemonade who was on recently.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing about your industry is you give people kind of almost like the power of confidence, or you just help them feel better about themselves, just looking a little more flashy or subtle or however they want to accent their own style.
Well, the great thing about jewelry is it's an accessory, so it's added on to all the basic stuff that you already have. So you don't have to worry about covering yourself. You can worry about expressing yourself. And, you know, depending on what situation you're in, you can go big or not. It's really very flexible, and I think it's the best place to express yourself without hurting anybody.
Nice. Yes. Precious Hammer is the name of your business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, like, what's the meaning behind that? Is there a story behind that name?
Well, when I bought my own tools back during my apprenticeship, I kind of referred to myself as Noir Jewel. That was kind of my handle. I called my jewelry stuff. But when it came down to business time, there was already a company that was very similarly named and had a couple of larger clients. So I didn't want to even bother with any toe stepping there. So my husband, who's also a jeweler, we were just thinking, gosh, what tools do we use? What kind of textures can we create? What materials are we using? All these different processes, all these different aspects to jewelry making and jewelry stuff. I even have a jewelry dictionary I pulled out to see what kind of words I could find. And we really like the dichotomy of precious and hammer. My husband and I are fairly different from each other personality-wise, so having that kind of dainty feeling of precious with the precious metal, the precious stones, the semi-precious stones, and of course sentimentality kind of juxtaposed with the hard, heavy sounding hammer that was used to build the piece of jewelry in the first place.
Nice. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's a very like kind of catchy, memorable name too.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah. So what type of pieces do you find yourself working on kind of most often?
Well, of course, repair is going to be a jeweler's bread and butter, as they say. But I do a lot of heirloom redesign, which is basically custom, but they already have stones that they're taking from something else. And if they're not taking it from something else, they might have gotten a stone on vacation somewhere and said, oh, I've got this stone hanging around. Help me figure out what to do with it. So people who like stones and have them on their own, and people are kind of tired of some of the old pieces that they have and ready to up the ante to their new self.
Yeah, and so antique restoration, that's like that's really neat. You deal with like a lot of like really old pieces, I'm sure, or maybe just some pieces that might be a couple years old. Or maybe like probably more so decades old in your case.
I've worked on pieces that are over 100 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
And but you also create brand new pieces, like unique designs as well.
Absolutely.
What is that process like for you when you're like creating like a new, like designing a new piece?
Well, it depends. A lot of the designs that we do at Precious Hammer are specifically for someone else, a person who wants something made. So a lot of times there's parameters involved. So there's, that person's style that we're doing research on and designing around, or the idea that they already have, for example, or the lifestyle that they live. But to be able to have our own pieces is pretty awesome. And with the having your own website, what better place to put your own creations?
Yeah, and what is your website, by the way?
Precioushammer.com.
Precioushammer.com. Yeah, I was browsing all your concepts and pieces that you have for sale on there, and they're beautiful. What pieces do you find yourself making for men more so? Like, are there other types of pieces that? Well, first of all, I guess what percentage of your like customer base is like female versus male?
It's almost entirely female, to
Yeah.
be honest with you. But this time of year especially, there's a lot of weddings going on, and a lot of younger couples also don't really like the stuff that you can find everywhere at the mall or the corporation stores. And so if they've heard of me, they look me up, and I have my own set of special tools to make special rings for men. And so that's really exciting to get the wedding bands a little bit more suited to the person instead of just off the shelf.
Yeah, I asked because I need to start getting inspiration for what I'm gonna do with my gift, which I'm so excited to see how it is. Are there materials that you find yourself kind of working more often with? Like, would you say you specialize in any kind of specific type of material?
Oh, sure. Jewelry runs the gamut from string and glue to Cartier and Tiffany with the platinum and diamonds. So there's a whole range within jewelry. And I've worked on all of that at some point. But for the most part, it is gold and platinum. Occasionally, I'll work in silver. And I do some alteration work on gold fill jewelry, which can be pretty sensitive materials.
And how do you like decide where to get your materials? Like, what is that like? Like, where do your materials come from, and how do you know that they're like high quality?
Well, I like to get my metals from a local refinery. I take my scrap metal there. They refine it down to its glorious originality, and then I get it back. And then just like my apprenticeship, I like to make my own alloys. I know what goes into 14 karat. I know what goes into these metals to make it work the way I want it to. You might do something a little bit less of one metal than another, so you have a little bit more flexibility if you're rolling something versus if you're just shooting it into a mold, for example. There's also a lot of corporations out there that many jewelry stores use and depend on regularly for either metal, stones, finished jewelry, or just little findings like the clasp for your necklace. And of course, reputation has a large part to play. There's also industry standards, and like the Kimberly process, for example, is in place, so you know the diamonds are coming from down a certain train. And with blockchain, actually, that's starting to become a thing in jewelry as far as a tracking system, basically farm to table, so mine to finger is what they're working on right now. So a lot of the middlemen that used to be there have been kind of sliced out, and it's a lot more direct to wholesaler than it used to be. And at home, I have things that I can use to test things as well. So even if I'm not buying something from a company and say it's a customer's piece that I'm verifying, I have tools that can test for 14, 18, 10 karat. things like that. And I also have tools that can test for diamonds, sapphires, topazes, and a variety of stones as well. Plus the good old eyeballs.
Nice. So yeah, when in doubt, you could always like do tests on the jewelry and the stones and the diamonds to make sure that it's like of the utmost quality, or at least what you planned on buying or purchasing.
Sure.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't think that I need to check every time. A lot of things, if something is wrong, sometimes you can tell straight off the bat. Like a moissanite does not look anything like a diamond, though they are used in a similar fashion. Looking at them, you would say, oh, that's not a diamond.
So some people, maybe young adults, they're thinking about what they want their jewelry collection to be like. Like what pieces would accent their style or their personality well, me included. I need to build my jewelry collection now. I need to buy a new watch, but as well as get some other pieces as well. So I'm curious if you have any advice for anyone for anyone beginning their journey towards like building a collection of jewelry.
Start young. No, I'm just kidding. No, the basic, and just like with your clothing, you want to have a capsule wardrobe with your jewelry as well. You want to have the simple things that are going to mix and match and get you through any occasion. I think of those as diamond studs, a simple diamond pendant, a plain band, maybe a pair of hoops, a simple chain bracelet. And then after that, that's your chance, man. This is accessory. This is personal. This is memory. This is personality, color, not color, big, small, whatever you feel like. This is your chance. And I'd follow similar lines as far as what body parts to cover, but go a little bigger. Get a nice wide bracelet that's going to make a statement on its own. Or if you're a dangle earrings, have several dangles. If you're maybe a bigger person, have some bigger jewelry. You're working with different real estate. You don't want your jewelry to get lost. Keep it proportionate to your body, and that will help you. And then keep it to your personality, and you'll never get lost. What I will say is explore all you want, but if there are pieces that you're going to wear for a long time, every day, never go out of style, get a good one. Get the quality stuff. It's going to last you. And it's also things that can be worked on and maintained over the years as well.
What jewelry could you imagine me wearing? Like, what do you think might fit well with me? Maybe you have a larger kind of like intake or like process for these types of questions, but I'm just curious, like necklace, rings, what do you think?
Well, it's all personal, but you strike me as a leather bracelet kind of guy.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think that you would have a very nice watch. You've mentioned watches, not just today, but before. And you probably have an idea for a pretty fun keychain or belt buckle, something more on the flashy side, depending on if you're a jacket person or a belt person or whatever your kind of signature pieces. I can see something a little bit flashier going with that too.
Nice. I do like a little pizzazz every now and then.
Hey, nothing wrong with some sparkle.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Nicole. I am curious, how could people like find out more about your jewelry or Precious Hammer if they're interested in using your services or purchasing one of your pieces? Where do they go? How do they get in contact with you?
Well, Precious Hammer Jewelry Studio is online and by appointment. And so the website, you can always contact me through there, studio@precioushammer.com. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, as either Nicole Raubenheimer or Precious Hammer Jewelry. And I do offer in-home consultations for 2 and 5 hour packages, so we can help you assess and prioritize your jewelry needs and desires from your own home as well.
Nice. And I'll make sure to link all that information below in the description.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again, Nicole, for coming on. It was such a pleasure learning more about Precious Hammer and talking to you about your business.
My pleasure, Hewitt. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah. Come down to Urban Network.